Let's take a trip down the Nile and look at one of history's most famous pharaohs, who was Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. What were some quotes attributed to her? So we can get to know her personality, thus revealing a bit about the nature of women in power. Since we do not have any words straight from the source, because they may have been lost to history, we will be looking at words attributed to her by novel sources. Queen Cleopatra VII was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, which was established by one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals, Ptolemy I Soter, a member of the Macedonian Greek dynasty established after Alexander the Great's conquests. She is best known for her intelligence, political savvy, and romantic relationships with powerful Roman figures Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Cleopatra sought to protect Egypt's independence amid the growing dominance of Rome, using both diplomacy and personal alliances to strengthen her position. Her dramatic life and tragic death by suicide after Antony's defeat by Octavian, later Augustus, marked the end of Hellenistic rule in Egypt and the beginning of Roman control. Cleopatra has since become a lasting symbol of female power, intrigue, and charisma. What are three quotes that describe her feminine touch are a traditionally masculine seat of power, showing key differences in how a woman would rule, as opposed to her male pharaoh counterparts. Quote number 1. Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me. This is from Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra, Act 5, Scene 2. This line is spoken by Cleopatra as she prepares for her death, expressing her defiance and desire to join Antony in the afterlife. We can see that she is truly given to emotion with these words. She is a woman in love, more than a woman on the throne, and she will be damned if she cannot have everything she wants, even in the afterlife, with a measure of pride. This quote reflects Cleopatra's acceptance of death and her desire to meet it with royal dignity. The robe and crown symbolize her reclaiming her identity as queen in her final moments. The phrase immortal longings suggests a yearning for release from earthly suffering and a belief in the eternal, perhaps a spiritual reunion with Antony or a place in history. It shows her courage and control, choosing to die on her own terms rather than be shamed by Octavian. It seemed to be a matter of pride, which is par for the course from a female ruler who came to power during the time of men dominating these roles. For the most part, she was not the only female pharaoh in history, but she was the most famous, or infamous, shall we say. Other notable ladies of power in ancient Egypt were Hatshepsut and Nefertiti. The Egyptian culture revolved around a polytheistic belief system, and believing in many gods was a way for the people to feel a connection to every aspect of life, because, as in Hinduism and other polytheistic cultures, many gods rule over various areas of life that people adhere to on a daily basis. This can be another way of saying people created these gods to give their work and mundane daily chores meaning, because if there is a god of the hearth and home, then tending to the upkeep of the house is a sacred deed that can be done with dignity. Even though Cleopatra was ethnically Macedonian, Greek, she adhered to the religion and culture of Egypt, embracing the looks and standards in practice of this era. This all being said, we can see that seeing a strong woman in power would not be a hard thing to accept, as in other cultures of the time. Usually, cultures who worship female deities have a deep reverence for the female form and usually hold women on equal footing, respecting their place in society. Deities such as Hathor, a goddess representing motherhood, fertility, love, sky, and beauty, was set as a feminine power standard for the Egyptian people. So it was not a stretch to see a beautiful woman such as Cleopatra on the throne, personifying gods such as Hathor and Sekhmet, gaining the adoration of the public, being an embodiment of their chosen gods. Quote number 2. My honor was not yielded, but conquered merely. This quote speaks to Cleopatra's pride and autonomy. She emphasizes that her honor wasn't simply given away, it was conquered, meaning that even in love or alliance her involvement with Julius Caesar or Mark Antony was not passive submission. but a complex, perhaps reluctant surrender of emotions or strategy. It reflects her intelligence and strength, highlighting that even in matters of the heart or politics, Cleopatra saw herself as an active player, not a victim. Our final quote: "I will not be triumphed over." This line, attributed to Cleopatra by Plutarch, reveals her fierce defiance in the face of Roman conquest. A Roman triumph was a grand parade celebrating military victory, often featuring captured enemies. Cleopatra's refusal to be part of Octavian's triumph shows her determination to die with honor, rather than live in disgrace. It underscores her unwillingness to be reduced to a symbol of defeat, and reinforces her identity as a proud, sovereign ruler. Even at the moment of downfall, many cultures of the time were under the thumb of the Roman Empire, and Cleopatra was not one to bow down. She knew her lover Mark Antony was a consul of Rome, and as part of the triumvirate, along with Octavian Augustus Caesar and Marcus Lepidus, he controlled much of the Roman affairs in the east. Egypt also controlled much of the grain production, which Rome depended on, and Cleopatra knew she had cards to play. But she was given to emotion. Her and Mark Antony was said to be the most dramatic of lovers. With the internal conflict and civil war between Octavian and Antony, she was put in the middle of a stronger Roman army and her lover. Octavian defeated Antony at the Battle of Actium and solidified his power, thus breaking with the triumvirate. It was a usual affair for there to be a triumph or parade back in Rome to celebrate the victory at hand. Usually the conquered would be displayed in some sort of comical or shaming manner for the Roman mob to abuse, as they were marched through the streets of Rome for all to see and shame, thus adding pomp to the victory. Cleopatra knew she was beaten, because she came as a package deal with Mark Antony, and she would not simply be taken as a token to celebrate her love's demise. The story of her suicide is made famous in movies and plays where she is said to have taken her own life by placing a snake known as a venomous asp on her breast, allowing the bite to course venom through her veins. I believe, though, she might have been trying to save face and not give Rome the satisfaction, but at the same time, she was broken up over the death of her love, Mark Antony, upon a circulated lie of her death. She would share her lover's fate and meet him in the afterlife. She would rather burn out brightly in passion than fade out in shame. This is why her life, and more famously, her death, is still being talked about today. Human beings cannot help but go for a good story, and whatever the truth may be. This was a fitting end to a queen who lived as if an actress on a stage, and all of Egypt, and now Rome was her audience, sparking curiosity and intrigue with her death game tryst. What can we learn from the way Cleopatra chose to live, or more apropos, chose to die? The manner of Cleopatra's death teaches us powerful lessons about dignity, agency, and resistance in the face of defeat, rather than allow herself to be paraded as a trophy in Octavian's Roman triumph. Cleopatra chose to end her life on her own terms, likely by poison, maintaining control over her fate to the very end. Her suicide was not an act of weakness, but a final assertion of sovereignty and pride, preserving her legacy as a queen, rather than a conquered prisoner. It highlights the idea that even in moments of total loss, personal agency and honor can be preserved through courageous choices. Cleopatra's death reminds us that how we respond to adversity can define our legacy, just as much as how we live. Long live the pharaoh,